All right, so this is gonna be my full review and 1 month later experience with the iPhone 16 Pro Max. And what I'm mainly gonna be talking about here is how this phone is actually different than previous iPhones for me, especially the iPhone 15 Pro Max, which is what I was living with the past year. So I'm not gonna go over all the generic iOS and iPhone features that are across the lineup, just more of the unique things that this particular model of iPhone has changed, improved, or affected my life differently. The first topic I want to discuss is basically, could this be my mobile studio? And that was a question I posed to everyone, and I wasn't really sure when I got it. I wanted it to be. I wanted the microphones that they were talking up a lot in the event and the cameras that they're talking up a lot in the event to be so good that this phone by itself could basically be my mobile studio. I could go anywhere I needed to, quickly record a video, use the audio on the phone, and edit on the phone, publish it on the phone, all of that stuff. Complete workflow, self-contained within a single phone. I thought that would be amazing. And was it doable? Yes. I do think there is an element of it being effective and useful, but I don't know if I would say this could be my self-contained mobile studio. I think if I was going somewhere, I'd at least take these external microphones that are really easy to carry around and plug into it, because there is still that nature of just a microphone closer to your face just sounds better. And while the studio audio mix function is really neat and it can make that microphone sound closer to your face, the higher you put up the volume, the more processing and slight distortion you hear on the audio, and it definitely just doesn't sound quite as clean as this microphone set. For an example, this is the microphones just being regular, no effects, no audio mix added to it, just the regular out of the box recording with the new studio quality microphones. And this is adding that studio effect that is built in now with audio mix. And yeah, it does make it sound better. It does make the microphone sound closer to your face, but it does not sound as good as me just carrying around the light and portable Hollywood mics. Honestly, they're so easy to take around and so easy to plug into the phone. They just work, that it's kind of a no-brainer to still bring them, because this is just not as good. Now, if I forgot this microphone set, or I just could not bring it with me for one reason or the other, then this is still a really good option to have, because it makes that footage way more usable. But is that what I'm going to just do all the time? Absolutely not. This is still a better quality setup, and it still produces better quality content. Now, the cameras are really, really good. I think they're good enough for anything I would need. Now that they can shoot 4K 120 as well, I'm going to start adding more slow-mo B-rolls to my videos here. I don't always do a lot of B-roll footage because sometimes I'm showing a lot right here, so it's not as needed, but it is really cool to have, and it can make things look a lot smoother just because it's slowed down like that. And that is a really nice option to have. Honestly, one of my biggest disappointments is the 48 megapixel ultra wide. I don't really think the megapixel count has changed a lot. You still can't do 24 megapixel shots like the main camera does by default now. You can do the full 48 megapixels, and it is better than on the 15 or earlier models, but not significantly. I think that's because everything else about the lens is still the exact same aperture, all that kind of stuff like that. So it's letting the same amount of basic light in, so having more megapixels to capture it doesn't actually improve a lot. So the macro shots and any ultra wide shots just aren't crazily improved. And I would have liked to see that more focused on and improved with this ultra wide camera. Because honestly, that 5x lens that they added last year was really, really cool and a great upgrade to the telephoto lens. So I wished their ultra wide upgrade was a bit more on that level, but I don't quite think it is. Again, this is no complaints to the camera setup on my iPhone 16 Pro Max. It is still really, really solid, and it makes me not feel like I need to have a dedicated professional camera for my YouTube videos here. And again, these are videos for YouTube, and you can get away with some things more so than like filming an entire movie. But Apple films all their events now with their iPhones, and that's really impressive. So I actually think for anything professional that I'm doing, my iPhone 16 Pro Max can do it with its cameras. But I can say the same thing about my 15 Pro Max. And in a lot of ways, I can say that about my 14 Pro Max too. There are some smart HDR improvements from the 14 to the 15 that are better, but the 15 to the 16, they don't even have a change in the smart HDR. So there's not a lot there, and the main lens got very minimal improvements. So honestly, ever since the 14 Pro Max, I could use iPhones, my pro cameras, and honestly, even before that to a degree, because this camera right here is the iPhone XR. And the only reason I'm having it record here is just because the 15 Pro Max is better used for down here, because when I can crop in, it keeps more of the detail, where this camera, as soon as you start cropping and doing things like that, the quality decreases significantly. So it can do like this one shot, that's kind of it. But I just want people to know that these iPhones, they can really jumpstart your video creating career. I mean, this is how I started my YouTube channel. I also used the built-in iPhone microphones for the first several videos, and it worked. It did the job. So don't be afraid to just take your phone and make it your mobile studio. And this one is the best at doing that I've seen so far. But since I already have other equipment, it's not so good that it's going to replace that other equipment. But if need be, you can record, edit, and publish all from the same phone. And that is something that this phone has that I don't know if I could quite say that about my previous phones, just because audio quality was a big thing that was not quite up to par with the rest of the experience. So hopefully that answers that question for you guys to the best of my ability. And going off of camera and recording features, I'm going to talk about the new button on the iPhone 16 Pro Max. The camera control button right here. First of all, I want to talk about, does this thing even work? So pushing the button, it certainly opens the camera app, and that's no problem right there. That works fine. Everything's good and dandy, and that works great. You can see a little bit of the studio here from a different perspective. So yeah, I mean, nothing bad there. Does the job of being a shortcut button for the camera. But that's not all this button claims to be. It's not just a shortcut button. It's supposed to be the camera control, right? So you have press down on the camera control here, and I have it preset to just switch between the lenses. And this is what I've found to be the most useful, but it's still not perfect by any means. Although what is nice about iOS 18.1, which I just got the RC build of it on this one here, is when you scroll all the way over on the lenses, you can actually switch the selfie camera, which is nice because otherwise the camera control doesn't really get to the selfie camera as far as I know in any other way really. So it's good to have that option right here. Something else you might have noticed is that I actually have it set to where it doesn't make all the other controls disappear from off the screen when I'm using the camera control. So I know that was a lot of people's problems with it, is that when you activated this, everything else would disappear. And that is fixable. You can go right into your camera settings, and right at the top right here, it says camera control. Just tap that, and it's the clean preview button that is checked by default. So when that is checked and you go back into your camera app, then you click down on the camera control and start adjusting things, you can see that everything else disappears and it gives the clean preview as it says. But if you don't like all your controls disappearing on you, which I don't really, you can just go back in here and uncheck that. And then when you do the same thing, you can still adjust all these controls, but all of the other controls on screen are no longer disappearing on you, and you can still easily access them and all the stuff like that if you so choose. And that's really the best way I found to use it, but even that, it's still hard to want to use it. Basically, I use the camera control button as a shortcut to open my camera, and that's usually it. I usually take the photo with the same shutter button that's on screen. I switch my recording mode with the same slider here. I switch my lenses by just tapping one of these buttons, because it's just so much easier than going up here, clicking, and navigating between it. It's just, why do that when I can just tap the buttons? My thumb's already used to being there. It just makes sense. Now, when the visual intelligence stuff comes out with this camera control button, I can see me using it more often for that. But that's a lot to put on one AI feature, a whole dedicated button for it. I don't know. It's a shortcut to open the camera app. So basically another action button for me. And that works, and it gets me in there quick, and I do kind of like it. And because of the recessed nature of it, I never accidentally click it. I only hit it when I want to. So it could be worse, and I still think it's more of a gimmick than anything else. That's not a reason to upgrade. At least at the state that it is right now, this camera control does nothing better for you. Something else that Apple mentioned a lot in their event is that they made this phone even bigger. It's now the largest iPhone they've ever sold. And yeah, you can tell a little bit, not by a lot. And I do like it. I like that the screen is larger without it physically gaining much size. If you saw my comparison video between this and the 14 Pro Max, which if you haven't, I recommend going and watching that now. But if you did see that, you would see how the width of the phone is actually exactly the same as the 14 Pro Max. The height is a little bit larger on the new 16 Pro Max, and it's just so slightly thicker. But because of the edges that are kind of curved in on this phone, it doesn't even really look thicker than the 14 Pro Max. And this phone is lighter than the 14 Pro Max. It is heavier than the 15 Pro Max, but it's lighter than the 14 Pro Max, which is really nice to see weight reduced. And that's mostly due to the titanium instead of the stainless steel on the sides. So all I have to say, it's a nice size. It doesn't add a lot of weight or actual footprint on a table or in your hand. So it's still very comfortable to hold, at least for me. Now I have been using this without a case during this entire month period. So that's part of it. It is a lot more comfortable without a case there. But I'm getting a case soon and I'll try it with that as well. And we'll see how that goes. But I know it's not going to be any worse than the 14 Pro Max with a case on it. And I have used that before. And that is really nice to see a bigger screen without any more inconvenience or hassle and the same amount of comfort, if not more, than the 14 Pro Max. But I will wrap this up saying, again, not a reason to upgrade. It's not that significantly bigger. The bezels are thinner, but they're not dramatically thinner than the 15 Pro Max. You notice it when they're side by side, but if they're not side by side, you are not going to notice it. Another change Apple talked about in their event, which I have noticed, is the better battery life. I definitely can tell that this is a better battery life than my 15 Pro Max. My 15 Pro Max, I believe, is still at max capacity. The battery is still in really good condition, so that's not the issue there. It is just simply that this battery is bigger and the chip is even more efficient. So that just helps this be a battery beast. And it is. I've ended days at 60% battery before. Now, those are very light use days. If I would ever use it to record a bunch of videos in one day, well, that's gonna suck the battery right out of it. But if I'm just casually using my phone throughout the day and maybe I went somewhere like a park or something most of the day and I'm not always on my phone, well then I could very easily end the day with over 50%, closer to 60, even 70 some days. And that's just nuts. So this thing is crazy for battery life. You're gonna have no worries there. But again, I would say that that's still not a big enough reason to upgrade because I had no problem lasting a full day on my 15 Pro Max. I get pretty close on the 14 Pro Max, but even that, if you got a Pro Max iPhone, you're probably fine. Unless your battery is just getting old and worn out. That's basically the only thing that could cause it. Otherwise, you have plenty of battery life. So don't let the extra 20% at the end of the day make you think this is the phone you have to get. You are gonna notice it, it's gonna be there, and it's nice. But is it a necessity? No. And the last couple things I'm gonna mention before we end this video is I'm gonna talk about Apple Intelligence, which actually is just about here for this iPhone. It should be releasing this next week here, the last week of October, assuming there's no big issues in this RC build, and I have the version that should be released right now. And it works. I mean, you got the new look of Siri, and she understands your language and wording better. So if you say something like, Siri, set an alarm for, wait, no, actually set a timer for 2 minutes. Wait, no, actually set a timer for 5 minutes. There it goes. After all that, she still understood that I just wanted what I ended with. And before that, Siri would get confused and convoluted. And I do like the cleanup feature, which I show in a YouTube short more thoroughly, but I'll give a quick preview here as well. And I do think that is handy, but it's not stellar and amazing. It's not a generative model that's filling in those details. It's using the surrounding environment to guess what would kind of be there. So it's not quite as advanced as even some versions of this on Google or Samsung and things like that, which is a little disappointing, but I have used it to clean up a few things here and there. And if you just do small background items, it does the job well. And I do enjoy having my messages summarized and my emails summarized and things like that. But I would also just say it's not been impressing me that much. There have been many times where it's not properly summarized a set of group text messages. Like it'll give me a summary and then I'll read the text. And you know why it summarized it that way, but it didn't catch the sarcasm or it didn't do something about it and it got the meaning all wrong. So just be careful with your message summaries. Don't trust them too much. As I've learned, I would maybe double check their work, at least in this current version. Hopefully they keep getting improved on and they are even more accurate and accurate as time goes on. And it has writing tools, but I don't know. The writing tools just did not do it for me. So here I got a test email that I just typed up quick in Notes, and you can easily select this. And what I do like is when you select something, they have a couple of the options that pop up right away: the rewrite and proofread, the yellow Apple Intelligence symbol as you get to all the writing tools, and an actual built-in button to Notes to activate writing tools. I do think that is way better than just having to select it, tap it, and look for the writing tools option there. Way more accessible, way more obvious that it's even a thing. So that is better than the first few betas. But these are your options for writing tools. You got proofread, you got rewrite, you got rewrite it as friendly, rewrite it professional, or make it concise. Then you can do summaries, key points, lists, or turn it into a table. So as far as proofread, no complaints there. Very handy. Tap this, and it made 4 changes to make my grammar just a little bit better. And that is phenomenal. It can also walk you through what those changes were and explain them to you, which I think is incredible. And if you're writing a paper or something like that and you want to make sure that you got at least your grammar right, this is perfect. But if you rewrite it in any other way, you're basically going to set off every single AI detection tool out there that schools and teachers have, because it kind of screams AI generated. So if I say I want this to be more professional, this is what it will do. Hi, I thoroughly enjoyed collaborating with you, and I sincerely hope that we have an opportunity to continue working together in the future. I found your product to be particularly interesting, and I thoroughly enjoyed reviewing it. However, I believe that we should endeavor to plan our collaboration more meticulously in the future, as there was a significant time constraint with this particular product. Thank you for understanding. It's just so many big words that I probably wouldn't use. And yeah, it does sound more professional. I'll give them that. And the friendly one sounds more friendly, and the concise is more concise. So they do their jobs. I just feel like if I start depending on these writing tools, that all my emails, all my comments, things like that are just not gonna sound like me. I don't know. I'm just not a big fan of them. I don't really have a problem making things sound the way I want them to sound. So I guess if people have a really hard time typing up something friendly sounding, well, maybe that friendly option will be really helpful, or they just really want to make sure this goes over easily and they're not sounding too harsh. You know what? Go for it. That's totally fine. But the professional one, I just feel like using this in too many professional settings might just feel lazy. I don't know. That's just my personal opinion. There's something about someone writing you an email that's actually them writing it. It just seems more sincere and genuine. And I think that's a good thing to establish even in a professional setting. Anyways, in the last several videos I've made on the betas and different progress they've made, I've covered all of these features already because they haven't really made any dramatic changes, just slightly refined them. So if you want anything more in depth on this channel, definitely check those ones out. Or if you're wanting to see a deep dive in specifically this released version of 18.1, let me know and I can totally make a dedicated video all about that. But suffice it to say, Apple Intelligence as it is right now has not blown me out of the water, and to me, it doesn't even feel that upgrade worthy. The writing tools are there, the message summaries are kind of neat, except for when they get things completely wrong, and Siri understanding you better is welcome, but honestly, I don't get why that's limited to Apple Intelligence. Siri should at least be able to understand what I just said there in previous versions. That shouldn't have been a problem for so long. But I am very much looking forward to all the future Apple Intelligence features coming yet. They got the Genmoji still coming, the image playgrounds, which those ones are fun, but not really very practical focused. And the big thing that's still coming is the ChatGPT integration and Siri 2.0, as everyone calls it, which is just the big revamp to Siri so she can interact with on-screen awareness and just have way more context, way more backing. So that is something I'm really looking forward to. But until that's here, Apple Intelligence is not impressing me as of right now. So, all right, what's the conclusion? What do I think of this phone? Well, I like it, but it doesn't change a lot for me. I mean, all those Apple Intelligence features I described to you, my 15 Pro Max can do them too. I believe the only thing that's exclusive to the 16 Pro Max is the visual intelligence feature. I'm not even 100% sure that's exclusive here, but I think it is. And if that feature ends up blowing me out of the water, then maybe I'll change my mind at that point. But right now, my 15 Pro Max can do all that my 16 Pro Max can do. So I like it, but it's not that different. The USB-C port is the exact same speed and kind as the 15 Pro Max, which the USB-C port is why I need these phones. It's why I only use the iPhone XR here as a backup when I really need it, because moving files off of a phone that does not have these higher powered USB-C ports is just awful. So unless you think this capture button is just the most amazing thing in the world, or the extra 0.2 inches of screen space is just to die for, don't get this phone. Or at least wait until people are getting the full Apple Intelligence experience to tell you if that's really worth upgrading to. Because as it stands currently, Apple Intelligence is not worth it. Or if you got a 3-year-old phone and the money to upgrade, well, feel free, upgrade. It's a nice phone. I have no complaints about the build quality, how it feels to use. iOS 18 is pretty good. I got no complaints there. It's a good phone to use. But as far as their headline Apple Intelligence features or the capture button, they're nothing. Honestly, right now, they're just gimmicks to make you want to upgrade and feel like you need the newest one. Not worth it to me. So I hope that helps you guys. I'll check back in with this phone once Apple Intelligence is fully released and the new Siri is out, and see how much that really changes things for me. And if I all of a sudden just fall in love with the capture button or visual intelligence with it, just makes so much sense. Things like that could change my mind. But don't get it now unless you like how it is right now. We don't know how those things are going to actually work and function on these phones. We can only look at what Apple promoted and how we think it's going to work. So just hold off and wait for this channel to test out those things, and be subscribed for that. And if you guys enjoyed this video, please give it a like and comment below and what your favorite part is about the iPhone 16 Pro Max, or the biggest things you'd like changed on the 16 Pro Max. I'm not one of those people who thinks the phones need to look leaps and bounds different year over year. Because honestly, the iPhone has not looked different for like 4 or 5 generations now. So I don't really care if it visually looks that different. I just want it to have practical functionality differences, and I don't really see that here either. If you guys are liking the new studio, comment that down below as well. We're still finishing some of the lighting equipment, and I actually got this new desk from Vernal here, and I'll talk about that in its own video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this review of the iPhone 16 Pro Max. And as always, if you're curious about my setup, it's going to be linked in the description down below, and have a great rest of your day.